this all does coincide with this work about these apocalyptic scenarios that you guys are talking about, because if we don't have an understanding of how we got to where we were, and we also don't have an understanding that this can happen to us again, it's very possible for us to happen again.
It is indeed possible for it to happen again. And in the 8th episode of Ancient Apocalypse, one of the scientists from the Comet Research Group makes that point, that the comet that disintegrated, that caused so much damage on Earth 12,800 years ago, its debris stream is still in orbit. The Earth passes through it twice a year. And in the next 30 years, we're going to be passing through a very lumpy bit of this 30 million kilometer wide debris stream that's called the Taurid meteor stream. We should be paying much more attention to that, because it's not doom and gloom, because we can do something about it should we choose to do so. And let's stop focusing all our efforts on fighting one another and hating one another and filling the world with anger and fury. And let's work together as a human species to make life on this planet better for everybody. That's what's going on now. There's a new mindset which is coming into force. And I celebrate the youth of our society today, because they are refusing to be bound by the orders that are given to them by the powers that be. There's a new spirit of thinking for ourselves, and that new spirit is, in my view, going to change everything. It seems like a dark time right now. A lot of stuff is going on. That's always the case when you're in the middle of a paradigm shift. It seems like a dark time, but we're privileged to live at this time, because 200-300 years from now, this time is going to be looked back on as a turning point in the human story.
We might mention that, speaking of the Taurid meteor shower, we are passing through the Taurid meteor stream right now as we speak.
As we speak, yeah.
Late October to about the second week in November, up till about the 15th or 17th of November, Earth is passing through that stream. And it probably is the most important meteor stream in terms of the history of recent life on this planet. And this goes, to people like Bill Napier and Tube and all of those guys who've...
Major astronomers are very aware of this, and it's almost like something is trying to shut them down and stop the word getting out there. Yes, NASA has a search for near-Earth asteroids, but weirdly they're not paying any attention to the Taurid meteor stream. We know that there's 200 objects in the Taurid meteor stream that are a kilometer or more in diameter. Comet Enki, which is at the heart of the stream, is almost 5 kilometers in diameter. These are all fragments of that original giant comet that began to disintegrate 12,800 years ago, and that the Earth ran into.
So is this? What are you showing me, Jamie?
This is a video on Twitter of the Taurid meteor stream.
It's a great time to see shooting stars.
Fireball pop up.
Yeah.
Bam.
There they go.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what happens. We're in that time period now, and fortunately, most of those fireballs are caused by little objects, maybe the size of your fist, maybe just the size of a fingertip, maybe just a speck of dust burning up into the atmosphere, but they are shrouding very large objects that are on that same orbital trajectory which the Earth crosses twice a year. And we should be paying attention to those large objects, because we can actually do something about them. And the evidence shows that they did something terrible to the Earth 12,800 years ago, and they changed everything.
And that is what this Netflix series is all about.
That's what Ancient Apocalypse is all about. It's why it's called Ancient Apocalypse, because that's what it ultimately comes down to. Now, there's masses of material in the series about the possibility of a lost civilization and presenting the evidence for a lost civilization. But ultimately, when you talk of a lost civilization, how did it become lost? What happened that took it away, that obliterated it from human memory? And this apocalyptic episode called The Younger Dryas is the answer to that. The point I often make, which I think is worth making again and again, is how different the world was during the Ice Age. Mm-hmm. The Sahara Desert was green. It was a fertile place. Nobody's doing much archaeology in the Sahara Desert today. The Amazon rainforest, 5 million plus square kilometers under deep canopy. Hardly any archaeology is being done there. And yet we know from LiDAR surveys that there are enormous structures under that canopy. And then what about sea level rise? 400 feet sea level rise at the end of the Ice Age. The prime real estate on Earth, 27 million square kilometers. It's about 10 million square miles, were submerged by rising sea levels at the end of the Ice Age. And again, archaeology, there is marine archaeology, but they're not really looking very closely at that. I wonder, Jamie, would it be possible to pull up the diving clip?
Is this from Japan?
No, this one's actually from Bimini. We have an episode on Bimini and on the very controversial structure called the Bimini Road.
Oh, right.
And this is just a little clip from that.
My suspicion is humans are a species with amnesia. We have forgotten something incredibly important in our own past. And I think that that incredibly important forgotten thing is a lost, advanced civilization of the Ice Age. I've spent decades searching for proof of this lost civilization at sites around the globe.
Oh, wow.
Now, my aim is to piece together these clues.
And that seems extremely strange.
To show you evidence that challenges the traditional view of human history.
You see
And
that?
the Bimini Road.
The Bimini Road is not even very deep. It's only about 20 feet deep. It was one of the last things to be covered by Ice Age sea level rise, and that's why we show a graphic, a reconstruction of it above water. It's made of extremely regular blocks, megalithic blocks, on a very large scale, more than 1,000 feet in length. When you dive on it, and I've dived on it multiple times, and I went back to diving in order to dive on it again in this series. It's impossible to believe that it's entirely a work of nature. And I took a marine biologist there with me who's dived all over the world, and he agreed with me that there's just no way that this thing can be explained as a totally natural phenomenon.
Can we see it, Jamie? And what is the conventional reasoning for this?
The conventional reasoning is that it's just beach rock, fractured into natural patterns. But when you get there and get underneath those rocks, you see that they're propped up, they're leveled out with rocks underneath them, that the whole thing is being very carefully structured by human beings. And the point is, and another point I'd like to make is Bimini today is a tiny, tiny island. But Bimini during the Ice Age was part of an enormous island. The whole Grand Bahama Bank was above water, an enormous island. And weirdly, that island turns up on an ancient map. It turns up, that's not the Bimini Road. But that is on the left. That's the Bimini Road. You got the cursor on there. Yeah.